A doctor in 1905 quoted the Bible asking how to remove an entire group of people, actually Black people from the South. And I'm going to show you exactly how he did it. Physically, the Negro was at his highest day of development as a slave. From a dwarf, he was bred up to the full stature of manhood. He was well fed and clad in his labor in the fields of sunshine and fresh air and good sanitary conditions. This is probably one of the craziest things I've ever read. Sutherland is addressing a medical association in Memphis, Tennessee. He is, according to this, a white doctor, and he's advocating for the separation of the white and Black races for moral and medical reasons, regarding African Americans as an inferior race morally, intellectually, and medically. Hi, I'm Danielle Romero. Thank you so much for being with me here on my channel, where we talk about American identity and family stories. And I wanted to go through a primary source with you today that is a little shocking. It's shocking. And I'm not going to do my regular video script. Usually I have notes scribbled down. I have some, but I wanted to just go through the primary source with you because I think we're living in an era where, playing telephone, you play telephone as a kid. And it's so funny when you watch kids play telephone now because, if you, as the adult, or if you're summer camp counselor or something, stuff like I've done where you whisper it to the kid and then you see what goes around the circle. It's complete nonsense, but it comes back and it's super funny. It's so funny in that context. But when we're talking about passing down factual information, history, passing it down through generations, and that happens, that's not funny. That's serious, and we need to get back to the source. A primary source is a great way to do that. And primary sources is not like they're unbiased, right? But it's us looking at what somebody actually said, their actual thoughts at that time. And so we're going to go to 1905, Memphis, Tennessee, and we're going to chat about this. If you love doing deep dives into hidden history, American identity, family stories, and you'd like to support me off of YouTube, which is awesome, please come over to Patreon at patreon.com/NYTN, or you can go send me a coffee. Literally, this is from you guys. We'll put the link in the comments. It's coffee.com/NYTN, KOFI, and literally a tip jar. And when I'm working on scripts or I'm up late researching, drink a lot of coffee. So thank you so much for this. A doctor in 1905 quoted the Bible asking how to remove an entire group of people, actually Black people from the South. And I'm going to show you exactly how he did it. So let's go over to the Library of Congress page first. I want to show you this document. Okay, I'm not great at screen sharing, but hopefully I can figure this out. So if you go to the Library of Congress, open this up. So it's just loc.gov. And this is a printed book material, and it's called The Destiny of the American Negro. And it says it was reprinted from the Memphis Medical Monthly. So this is a medical journal, medical magazine of some kind, December 1905. And it is, the person speaking is H.L. Sutherland, MD. We have a doctor. And so when you click this, we're going to go through this. I'm not going to read every page to you. There's 12 pages, but I do want to go through it. But I just want to show you this. So basically, Sutherland is addressing a medical association in Memphis, Tennessee. He is, according to this, a white doctor, and he's advocating for the separation of the white and Black races for moral and medical reasons, regarding African Americans as an inferior race morally, intellectually, and medically. So I have it opened up here. You can download it yourself. I'll leave the link. We're going to chat through this. But before we do that, I even wanted to share that I'm a trained historian, but I also love family history and kind of creating context there. And in 1905, my mom's side of the family, her great-grandmother was 5 years old, born in Louisiana. And according to the census records at the time of her birth, she was labeled as mulatto, and her parents were both listed as Black. And what does Black mean? Well, it means everything and nothing. We've done deep dives on this channel, white and Black. These are ridiculous terms for people. You think Black, it's like a monolithic thing, and it's not. She was multiracial. She had Choctaw heritage. She had West African heritage. She had French. She had Spanish. And so just keep that in the back of your mind. Even if this is not something that directly connects to your family, just saying the American Negro, we're using the word Negro here, and then he's going to be talking about whites and Blacks. These terms are not being elucidated, and I think that is on purpose. So the destiny of the American Negro. The destiny of the American Negro is a question fraught with great interest to all citizens of the United States. His place among the races has not been definitely fixed. So keep that in mind. He's saying we don't know where the Negroes are going to land. While his advancement socially is a perpetual cause of hysteria to the northern philanthropists, his physical preservation is exciting the gravest apprehension of those who, from daily observation of his environment, habits, and diseases, know him best. Let's pause there. Whoop! This opening. What this guy's basically saying is that the people in the North are a little crazy. They want equality, and they're hysteric. Actually, they're hysteric about it. But the people who know them best, who observe the blacks best in the South, feel differently. So he said, notwithstanding the assertion that, quote, all men are created equal, those who have been associated with the Negro for many years are slow to accept this fiat or to believe that he can ever be raised to our level, no matter how wide the door of opportunity may be open, but that race and heredity have been and are yet the determining factors in his struggle for a place among civilized people. After 40 years of freedom, keep in mind, like literally this is only like 40 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, right? With the paternalism of our government to uphold and sustain him against the dominancy of the superior race, his emancipators must confess to a measure of disappointment in his progress. So what he's saying here is that the government thinks that they're the daddy of the black race, and they're trying to help him not be crushed by the superior white race. And even his emancipators are upset by where the chips have fallen at this point. This is his claim. For the millions which have been spent on this education by state and by charitable individuals, there has been a fair return in a lessened degree of illiteracy. But paradoxical as it may seem, his moral and physical conditions have notably deteriorated. The Negro has neither moral conception nor religion, yet he is an emotional religionist of the loudest type and dies like a martyr. He is a fatalist without understanding it. He respects no law except through fear. He knows no country and possesses an inborn hatred for the white race, without whose care and control he would revert to barbarism in less than a score of years. Okay, we'll pause right here. So, if you don't know me, well, I'm a Christian. That is the most important part of my identity. You know, that trumps everything for me. And people say, why are you so obsessed with race? I keep getting, why are you so obsessed with race? Why are you so obsessed? I'm not obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with moving on from this conversation. That's what I'm obsessed with. But if you've ever planted a seed before, you ever plant a seed and you water a seed and you tend a seed, what happens? It grows into a plant, right? And I feel like seeds have been planted a couple generations ago, and they were watered and they were tended. And now we're dealing with the fruit of that, where we have this division in our society, and people want to act like, why is that happening? Why can't we just move on? Well, you've got to understand what happened to make that tree grow, right? Why do we have this bitter fruit right now? Well, a seed was planted. We want to go back even as far as slavery, right? This is not the victim Olympics. I'm not claiming that. But also, I wouldn't be here if a couple great-great-great-grandparents had not been taken across the Middle Passage as slaves and brought over to Louisiana and had kids. And I can follow that whole line directly to me sitting right here, looking like this. So, we have to put things in context. And I think that primary sources do help us to do that. But you can see here, even to say, he knows no country. Well, what happened, right? Let's keep going on. He has no cooperative faculty except in politics, being a born Republican. Isn't that interesting? And when he deserts his party, he is a marked man with his race and has become a renegade for personal gain. In his native state, he had neither religion nor tradition. That's a claim, right? Now his religion is purely imitative, and his only tradition is an exaggerated picture of hardships and cruelties imposed upon him while a slave. Now, that is just absolutely ridiculous, though, right? That's ridiculous. And yeah, there were nice slave owners. I will concede that. It's like, how nice could you be if you own a human being, right? Like, okay, we can all start there, right? But it is a spectrum. And we also know that there were just absolutely barbaric, monstrous slave owners. This has an impact, right? This is planting seeds. Seeds have been planted. And now, they say, like, the birds have come home to roost. we have problems, but we need to look further back. Like, what is the first cause here? Physically, the Negro was at his highest day of development as a slave. Oh, okay. From a dwarf, he was bred up to the full stature of manhood. He was well fed and clad in his labor in the fields of sunshine and fresh air and good sanitary conditions of his quarters, with plenty of plain but wholesome food, tended to the growth and development and power to repel disease. This is probably one of the craziest things I've ever read. So basically, being enslaved on plantation was like a vacation. Sunshine, fresh air, nice conditions. Like, again, I'm not saying that every experience was the same, but like, let me know who would like to trade freedom for being owned by another human being, and you're just at their mercy, their mercy, their whims. I would rather be poor and free than be enslaved with sunshine and fresh air, which I can get anyway, thanks. As a result, chronic disease, especially syphilis and tuberculosis, both of the intrinsic origin, were extremely uncommon affections in the Negroes, saying this didn't happen a lot. Their lives were ordered then exactly as we would order them now to combat the diseases. So basically, look how good they had it. It was so good for them they didn't have tuberculosis or syphilis. After the close of the Civil War, the picture completely changed. There was a steady movement of Negro populations to the cities and towns, which has increased with the years until they now equal or exceed the whites in the majority of our towns. By reason of their improvidence, they are crowded into insanitary abodes in the most undesirable parts of towns and have not the sufficiency of wholesome food. Marriage is the exception, and their children are brought up in shame. From long observation, I think not more than 2% of Negro girls preserve their virginity to the age of 12. The race has entered upon a, quote, descending developmental progress, as Humphrey has expressed, to old age. Poverty, ignorance, immortality, and disease is the condition of the masses of the Negro of the South today. We're going to skip down a little bit. He talks a lot about that, and you can go in this, but he makes a really crazy prediction. I want to chat with you about that. So he basically says, they've got all these diseases now. And the prophecy of the extinction of the Negro race by Hoffman, made 9 years ago, seems more probable of fulfillment now than then, not only because of the high mortality rate, but also of the lessening fecundity. The small number of Negro children on plantations is a matter of common remark by men who farm with Negro labor. So basically they're saying there's not as many kids, so Negroes are going to disappear. And he talks about population in the South, New Orleans, Charleston, Atlanta, Memphis, which is interesting because it's like, on some level he's saying, well, there's too many blacks compared to whites. They're taking over our towns. He said that at the beginning. But then he's saying, actually, though, mortality is so high for blacks, they're going to disappear. And I'm kind of like, well, then don't worry about it. I'm saying, like, just don't worry about it. Like, if you're all going to go away, they're not having babies, then just don't worry about it, right? But he is worried. He jumps down and says, it's a stupendous task to undertake to save a race of people from extinction whose characteristics are ignorance, immorality, superstition, and which regards our own efforts as inimical to its welfare. But we owe it to posterity, and we owe it to ourselves as Christian obligation, for, quote, he has been laid at our gate. So now he's going to start bringing in the scripture, and I want to address it. So he basically said there are a lot of Negroes, he's saying, who are infected and sick with diseases. And so he said, well, the radical treatment of the trouble would be the separation of races. But it's another question as to how this could be accomplished and where the Negro could be colonized so as to give him the best opportunity to enjoy life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. All right. So I'm going to link to a video. I'm not going to get into it here because I want to stay in this document. Abraham Lincoln, the night before the Emancipation Proclamation, had someone come to him with a plan. Because the concern, where do all these people go? What do we do? And they came up with a plan to offer these people who are about to be emancipated the opportunity to colonize some other areas. And the United States would provide shelter and opportunities for work, and they could build their life, and we could free people, but also not have them live in the United States. As you might guess, everything went terribly wrong with this. The people there was like 400 people, I think, who did choose to take the path of leaving the U.S. and 400 previously enslaved people and wanted to kind of colonize these other areas. And they were basically just left for dead. Like, we're not given all the stuff that they needed. I will leave a link to that video below if you want to see it. So it's interesting that he says that, because it's like, well, actually, they did try that and it was a colossal failure. And I have to just pause here. The Bible talks about like reaping what you sow. What you sow matters. You can't, like I said, plant the seed, water it, tend it, take care of it, coax it to grow, and then be upset with the fruit that comes from that plant, because you planted a bitter seed, you're going to get a bitter fruit. And slavery and this problem was just dropped upon us, and we didn't even want it. It just was laid on our doorstep. He uses the phrase, laid at our gate, and he's referring to the Good Samaritan story there, and we may get back to that. That's not what happened. It's hard to compare these two things, because slavery was something that people chose over and over and over again here. And that's a difference worth pointing out. So he jumps down, he says also, there are other reasons why the separation of the races should be made, and perhaps paramount to the consideration of the extinction of the inferior race. One of them is the preservation of the higher ideals of the Anglo-Saxon race by discontinuing association in the same territory and under the same laws of the race whose traits and tendencies are all bad. I wonder what he would say about me. You know, I grew up not knowing a lot about my mom's side of the family. Actually, nothing. Everything I knew was a lie. And, you know, I identify as a New Yorker. I mean, I live in Nashville. I have for almost 20 years. I'm a Christian and I'm a New Yorker. Really, that's my identity. People are like, are you white? Are you black? How do you see yourself? It's like, it's on some level, it's all nonsense, right? These colors are all nonsense. But the idea that he's painting with such a broad brush of like, you're Anglo-Saxon or you're part of a race whose traits and tendencies are all bad. It's like, to what point? Like, what's the ratio you have to be? Is it a zero sum? You're all Anglo-Saxon, or not enough? Is half? I mean, I'm no Anglo-Saxon. No. I'm just asking for a friend, right? So he's saying, I think it is impossible for two peoples with such marked racial differences to dwell in one country and be governed by the same laws. Then you shouldn't have brought these people over. And, you know, I homeschool my kids now. I used to be a teacher. But I talked with the kids about this a lot at the beginning of the school year. We were studying what the founding fathers did, because it was very interesting to see that the debate about slavery was happening even when we were breaking away from Great Britain during the Revolutionary War, you know, and writing out the Declaration of Independence, getting rid of the Articles of Confederation and writing the U.S. Constitution that kind of outlines our laws, because a lot of the founding fathers, they owned slaves, but they also believed slavery was wrong, but they also believed that you couldn't just get rid of it in one fell swoop. And there was like this, there were issues with writing the new laws where delegates did not agree about slavery. And some were just like, we need to get rid of slavery right now, and I'm not signing the new Constitution. But they ended up having, you know, there was enough people that compromised on that to say, okay, well, we want to get rid of it, but we're not going to make that a requirement to start this country. Yeah, these people were brought over, you know, and the state that they're in, the poverty they're in, the lack of education they're in. How could you say that it's their fault? Again, we're talking 1905, right? So association with an inferior race, whom we remember as our slaves, whose personal and political rights we do not respect, has had a brutalizing effect on us and has led to much bloodshed, which was not justified by the offenses committed. We know there is scarcely a place in the South today where a respectable white man can be convicted of murder or even sentenced to prison for a short-term killing of a Negro under any circumstances. This is one of our unwritten laws, inspired by our contact with the Negro. Okay, let's sit with this for a sec. Okay, so I don't even think you need me to comment on that. The contact with them. Where do you think they're going to go? You think they're just going to dissipate into the air after emancipation? He's going to go on. He's going to give another reason why the races need to be separated. He said there's illicit relations too frequently existing between white males and Negro females. The Negro woman, both in her own estimation and that of her race, is elevated when she's with a white man, he's basically saying. I have to be careful what I say on here because YouTube flags me nonstop. And it's the zenith of her expectations in life, and many otherwise estimable and well-bred white men become bound as in a shirt of Nessus by these sirens whose song is always ruin and death to character, and their ideals lowered, as evidence that I have not exaggerated the immoral tendency from dwelling together of these two races. He's like, when they get married, we have to but note the increasing number of mulattoes in our country. Statistics show that the mulatto, whatever shade in color, is morally and physically the inferior of the pure black, that he is a more... And just like, I skimmed this, but I didn't read this part yet. He is a more dangerous criminal, is comparatively worthless as a laborer, and more subject, to tuberculosis. He's like, and also don't forget the tuberculosis. He said, there's another danger, and the very thought thrills us with horror. I believe that our association with the Negro has dragged us down more than it has uplifted him. Okay, I don't know. Maybe you brought them over. Like, again, I just keep coming back to this. The accountability is so lacking here. I mean, there has been no point in this document, in this speech, where he's like, maybe we shouldn't have done that. He's more like, maybe we shouldn't have freed them, to be honest. He's not even like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have had slaves. He's like, maybe we shouldn't have freed them. All right, so he says now, I believe that we of the South are now confronted with the most serious problem, which we have had since the Reconstruction period. So that's the period following the emancipation. If slavery was a sin, 40 years of freedmen is an all-sufficient atonement. According to who? According to what? Like what? What? I mean, think about what 40 years is. If I lived my whole life as an enslaved person and I was freed at 40 years old, okay, so now I have to figure out how to exist in this new economy, how to exist in a world where, people don't want you there and they hate you. I mean, it's quite clear. And he's like, and we never forget that they were our slaves. And it's like, okay, so now from age 40 to 80, I need to figure out how to scratch out an existence. And freedom is the atonement. Remember at the beginning, we talked about how, he's referencing the founding fathers. Now here it's actually, we're doing you a favor that makes up for it. Sorry, right? No doubt the transition period and a change of labor from Negro to white would be a trying one and bring financial disaster to many, but for the incalculable good it would bring to our sons and their sons forever to be separated from this inferior and corrupt race, that they maintain a high standard of honor, that they may not imbrue their hands in his blood, that they may not draw the bar sinister. Okay, I have to pause here. So basically he's like, well, we actually had to end slavery because we were just in too close of contact with you guys. They have a new South, and for this they should ever pray, quote, who shall deliver us from this body of death? Okay, I do have some notes for you. I want to jump over to those. What's nuts? Okay, I want to grab some notes for you. Let's talk about this. So I don't want to talk about politics because I don't really believe that. We get cozy here. I don't really believe either political party is for you or for me. I really don't. I think we can pretty much all agree on that. And it's not even about, so it's not about modern politics, right? I think this is more about understanding mechanism. How does ideology actually work? Not just in theory, but I mean in practice in real life. We have a smart person, a respected person, possibly using facts, but there's a predetermined conclusion. They are going to, this guy's like, I'm getting to this conclusion no matter what. And this document is a masterclass in that, really. It really is. If we can separate our emotion from this, which we should. I mean, emotion is important, our emotional reaction, but this is a masterclass document, honestly. Reading this document teaches us something about history, about people. We all know people like this. When you have an argument with someone, or maybe, yourself, I've been there, where it's I'll hear you out, but I know what my conclusion is. I know where I stand, and you're not going to convince me otherwise. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good, right? This document is that. When someone is using facts, but keeps reaching the same conclusion no matter what the facts are, that is a sign of, that's a red flag, right? When someone takes scripture and reframes it to support what they already believe, instead of letting the Holy Spirit convict them or work on them, towards God's heart, that's a spiritual problem too. This teaches me that ideology can wrap itself up in faith language. I can quote scripture to sound righteous, but the fruit reveals the tree. My pastor just did a sermon on this last week, and it was really interesting. He had a bunch of pictures of trees without their fruit. She's like, guess what this is? And like, you really had no idea what was going on in the picture. I don't know what that is. But as soon as you get the picture of the tree with the apples on it, the oranges, the lemons, you're like, oh, an apple tree. It's a fruit tree. It's an orange tree. This is what Jesus said. You know a tree by its fruit. It's fruit. And that is like, whether you're a Christian or not, like that is such an important life lesson, right? We know that is true inherently. This is not like a history lesson in abstraction, right? This is a real document. This is a real person. These are real claims. These are real thoughts. These are real predictions. When we're reading primary sources, when you're researching your family, maybe reading those kind of documents, we think carefully about what we believe and why. This is something important. We're going to find out the authority figures, the facts, the public official facts, the official voice, they got it wrong. They're just plain wrong. I'm going to leave a link to this below and some links to other videos. And thank you so much for being here with me. I just appreciate you. I love being able to have these conversations for as long as we're allowed to have them, as long as I'm allowed to stay on YouTube. I had a little bit of a problem a couple months ago. Had some issues with being allowed to put stuff up. But for now, I'm here and we're here together. So thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.